going to get going. Wait a few extra minutes. Subscribers coming in, but I think we'll start now. I don't know if we have some food over here. If anyone's hungry, you can grab a slice and drink. Thank you all for coming, though. I know everyone's got busy schedules, and we appreciate you coming out tonight, taking the time to voice your opinion and be here. The agenda sort of that we're setting is, we want to introduce the team, give you a quick overview of our property, what we own, what we control, discuss our proposal, why we're proposing it, and then the main reason we're here is open up for questions and answers. So I'm Steve Cucinotti, this is Rick Valverelli, my colleague from the Jane Company. We're a real estate, Jane Company is a real estate development firm based out of Waltham, Mass. We have 60 plus years of combined experience, and we're currently working on the redevelopment of the Polaroid site, which is a 120-acre site that sits on 128. We have a great team of consultants that we put together to help us here in Framingham. Here tonight from BHB is Nick Scully and Rob Nagy. They've worked in the city before and are very familiar with the roadways. Our architects on record are the architectural team. Unfortunately, they're not here, but they've worked on various projects in the city. We've worked with them before in other areas, other projects that we've done. And their master land planning is top-notch. Ivy Ivers, a landscape architect. Again, we work with them. They're a local company with global reach, but they are, again, masters in land planning and landscape design. Lastly, Peter Barbier with Fletcher Tilton. He's our local counsel, and our land use and zoning attorney is out from Boston. So just an overview of the site. I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with it, but what you see on the screen in orange is what we control. Back last February, we purchased a little over 13 acres of land, and then shortly thereafter put the balance 13 acres, another 13 acres. So we purchased this piece and this piece, and then we have...
Excuse me, but every time you turn away from the mic, it's hot to you.
Okay.
Keep the mic in front.
All right, thank you. We put the adjacent 13 acres under control shortly thereafter. So it's 27 acres that you're seeing. That sits at the corner of Edgell and Edmonds Road. The parcel directly abuts Nobscot Park. I just want to make it very clear that none of our proposal incorporates the park. It's public land. We don't intend to build on it. We've had conversations with Rick McKenna. We spent a lot of time envisioning improvements to the park. We think it would be ideal. The park should be a focal point of this area, and we'd love to help revitalize it based on some of the input that Rick McKenna has given us. So the proposal, what you see on the screen here is in red is the existing B4 zone. We, in orange is what we propose for an extension, and I know the reason we did so was a lot of the studies, well, both studies that we looked at included all these properties, mostly in that extension that we're proposing. We understand from our website that some people are unhappy about being including the proposal. We've withdrawn our application, and we're happy to exclude whoever doesn't want to be included going forward. So, why are we proposing it? The B4 allows us to accomplish the objectives set forth in the economic development studies that we looked at, done in 2015, 2019, and wrapped up in 2022. The zone is actually very tastefully done. That's why we're not trying to change the zone or go for a different type of zoning. We think an extension of the zone makes a lot of sense. 27 acres, I would venture to say that there are no other large swaths of land in Framingham this size in the commercial area that can be developed. So what the B4 does, it allows us to consolidate parcels, create a large area for the development of a mix of housing types, such as apartments, condominiums, townhouses, duplexes, and cottages. The B4 allows us to create a true, cohesive, mixed-use village center. Right now, the center is focused on an intersection. We think that it can be improved. Just a little change to Nobscot Park becomes the focal point. The B4 allows us to bring amenities, and again, a diversity of housing types to the north side. And lastly, we believe that an alternative all residential development would be a lost opportunity for the community and the city, for the city and the community, because the economic and public benefits outweigh largely outweigh those of a strictly housing development. Our project would bring millions in tax revenue, added spending power will support local businesses, open space for community gathering, as you can see on some of the renderings here that we have, and increased connectivity and walkability. We'd love to connect up our site to Nobscot Park. We'd love to connect up the aqueduct with an internal connection. Again, a diversification of housing. There's, a lot of people that like to stay and live in Framingham. They're aging. They don't want to be forced out financially. Our diversification in housing allows for that to happen. Amenity uses that support one another in the community and bring a vibrancy and sense of space and place. So what you see on the screen now is our latest concept. We've worked through multiple iterations and we've ended up on this. We have a long way to go, obviously, but you'll see the diversification in housing here. You have your townhouses that run along the backside along the Rivoli, and the duplex townhouses that run in Edmonds. You have an assisted living facility on Edmonds as well, and then the multifamily is offered in the center of the site. These buildings sit approximately 500 feet from Edmonds and 500 feet from Edge Hill. The retail portion is also situated towards Edge Hill because that's where the retail sits in the village area. As conceptualized, this plan has 50% open space, it has 15% undisturbed area, it has a thoughtful layout which provides a natural buffer along the edges of the property. And when we look at the scale of this development, or proposed development, and we look at some of the properties on Edmonds Road, the 4-, 5-, 6-story buildings, we really don't think we're out of character here. The scale of the project is really set by the village zoning guidelines and the design guidelines, the zoning bylaws. So it sets a nice scale, a human scale, and that's why we think it makes sense to extend it. I know when you look at the plan, it seems very dense, so we looked at comparative projects of similar size in the city. Our project is roughly 14 to 18 units per acre, sits on 27 plus acres. The Nobscot Plaza project sits under just under 5 acres, is 32 units per acre. So we're half of the density of that project. And I know it's a different zoning, but on the south side, the lowest density project would be the Buckley on 6 acres. And that's 35 units per acre. So I just want to reiterate some of the community benefits, millions in tax revenue, the diversity in housing options. Framingham has the highest concentration of 20 to 49-year-olds in the Metro West. And a working age population is a key, as a good asset for the city, and they need a variety of housing options. Again, there's also an aging population that would like to age in place, and our project allows them to do so. It would bring much needed affordable housing and attainable housing. The consumer growth supports local businesses, again, by bringing spending power. The project also would support economic development growth, and then again, park recreation and open space with increased connectivity and walkability, increase the sidewalks, hopefully up Edmonds, as well as Edge Hill. And again, just to we'd love to bring a vibrant mixed-use development with amenities to this area of the community. So I'm actually going to bring up, I want to talk real quick about some of the vision that Rick McKenna had. We talked with him about the park, and a lot of what IBI did aligned with Rick's visions. And, should we be able to move forward, we'd love to contribute to some of the improvements here with improved woodland trails for hiking, snowshoeing, some signage, a place for play for children to play. The amphitheater is a natural amphitheater, just kind of needs to be cleaned up and change the parking a little bit. And so, as I said, I think Rick's visions have been great, and we'd love to contribute to that. So I know there's been a lot of concerned about the traffic with this plan. So I'm going to bring up Rob Nagy. He's going to address some of this right out of the gate that I think hopefully will answer some questions to start coming out of you. What's that? Should go back.
Is it right across the street where next to the gas station and it goes way back?
Right there. The gas station's right here.
Which gas station?
Is that right? Parks here. See, this is Edge Hill.
So thanks again, everybody, for coming on out tonight. I know this is, obviously with the turnout tonight, an important project for you, something that you're concerned about, something you want to hear more about. I do give these folks some credit here for coming on out, hosting this meeting. My name is Rob Nagy. I'm a transportation engineer with VHB. We've been doing transportation planning and impact studies throughout the Metro West area for the better part of 35, 40 years now. I live out here, I live in the area, I'm familiar with all the roads and some of the concerns that probably are echoing in your heads right now about the traffic impacts on these local roadways. And I want to tell you that this is the first step in probably a mile-long journey as we advance this project, or as this project gets advanced and discussed. We as traffic engineers were approached by the development team and said, you know, listen, we need to have a better understanding of what the impacts of this project might be, what options we have, where we should be focusing some of our attention, and we just need a little bit more guidance on this. We do believe that transportation is going to be an issue here. Certainly open space, the number of units, the amount of commercial development that exists on the site is something that all feeds into what the impact of the project is going to be, and that will ultimately be determined as the project advances into the city's permitting process. But one of the things that we wanted to spend some time, just a little bit of time talking to you about where our focus is ultimately going to end up being is what you see here on the screen. And it's really just making sure that there's an appropriate level, you know, in and of itself. If you went out there today and tried to drop this project out there, yes, I concur with probably 99% of the people in this room that there would be traffic impacts that would be negative to the folks who live out here. But there, you know, with the development comes improvements to some of the roadway systems that feed into this area here, and opportunities to expand upon options that the city thinks is important at the city government level, and we hope at the neighborhood level as well. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on the first impact to the outside world off the site, which is the driveways feeding onto the local roads. We want to make sure that those driveways are designed safely and that they interact with the local traffic patterns both on Edgell and on Edmonds efficiently and safely. So how those driveways get designed, you know, what kind of capacity that they offer to people coming in and out, making sure the sight lines are safe. That's the first stage of this project. We want to make sure where they're placed is respectful of you as the neighbors, but also are able to sort of address the impacts and carry the volume that expects to come in and out of this site. So, if there's a road, if there's a driveway, certainly on Edmonds and on Edgell, we want to make sure that those are designed appropriately and that they're focusing the traffic the way that the traffic wants to go and where it should be going. Parking on the site. We want to make sure that the parking is not just everywhere. We want to minimize the amount of parking. That has two benefits. One, it limits the amount of traffic that comes in and out of the site. And two, it limits the amount of impervious surface. From an environmental perspective, we want to make sure that there's more open space provided on the site. So the amount of parking that's provided on the site is somewhat set by the zoning here in the city, but also it shouldn't be more than is needed out here. Certainly, I guess the big intersection that I think most people would be concerned about would be the intersection of Edgell, Edmonds, and Water Street. We know that there's been some improvements out there that have been recently done. We have been monitoring how that intersection operates, and we're very thoughtful. We're going to be advancing in a thoughtful way how this project might impact that intersection. And we want to make sure that what we do out here is not going to overburden city has just put out there, but also could enhance it a little bit as well. Does that mean upgraded, sidewalks or widened approach there? I know that there were some recommendations in the city's master plan, transportation master plan. We want to look into those and see if this project could support some of those options out there. Bicycle, pedestrian, transit options that support the project but also support the area out here is also something we want to tap into. We recognize that there's sidewalks on some of the roadways out here, maybe not all of them. There's certainly not a whole lot of bicycle opportunities out here that I would call overly safe. Certainly you're sharing the road with motor vehicles out there. Does this project bring an opportunity to enhance those amenities that exist out there today and make them a little bit safer, a little bit more usable for folks who want to get on their bike and perhaps use it as a commuter option or recreational option? Next slide. And I agree. I'm not here to say that it's not a concern. It is absolutely a concern. It's part of the reason why I'm the only consultant who's standing up here talking about this element. It's something that is of concern to them, and it's of concern, I know, to, like I said, probably 99% of the folks in this room here. Before we get to the Q&A section here, let me just walk through the rest of our focus, and then I'll let the project team start to handle some of the questions that I know, the variable questions that will come out. I see the hand in the back there. I'll get to you guys.
A quick question. Will the questions be mic'd? Because we can't hear the comments back here.
Yeah, I think if folks are willing to come on up to the stage here and use the microphone to ask the question, I think that would be either that or we'll work that out so that everybody in the room can hear the question and the answer.
Thank you.
So what's next? As I mentioned, this is the first step in a long road. There's still focus, there's still opportunity to provide input. I think that's part of this meeting here tonight, this neighborhood meeting. What do you like about the project? What you don't like about the project? I suspect we'll know some of the things that you don't like, but we want to enhance some of the things that you do like and try to address or at least answer some of the questions. If not, then take them back with us so that we can provide a little bit more clarity as we start to go through the process of the rezone. Once the rezone, if the rezone gets advanced, it's not over at that point in time. There's still a whole site plan review process that needs to take place. And as far as transportation is concerned, certainly there are other environmental factors, site plan, stormwater, all sorts of different outlets that will need to be reviewed. But as far as the traffic is concerned, what we will do at that point in time is officially kick off the traffic impact assessment of the project, where we'll look at more than just driveway intersections. I call them driveway. To your point, I think that you could classify them as roadways because they're feeding into the development, not individual driveways leading to each of the individual, apartments and townhouses that are out there. But we'll identify a study area that's much more broad than just the driveways and the Edgell-Edmonds water intersection. It will look up and down Edmonds and Edgell and look at the impacts that the project could have on those locations and identify them. We'll assess all the existing development that's happened out there over the past several years. We'll look into the future and see what other projects and what other developments may happen out there and consider them in the impacts of the project. We'll look at the specific project as it gets advanced. The rezoning does allow for certain certain levels of development to happen out there. What you see up here on these are concepts that this team is looking to build, looking to get feedback on, if you will. It doesn't mean that these are locked in stone just yet. We certainly want to hear your input, what you like about it. I heard maybe some elderly housing might not be a bad thing out here. We'll take a look at some of that and see if that's something that can be modified as we go through this. And once we understand what the project is, we'll look at the traffic impacts of that specific project on those roadways. We'll identify future roadway improvements that this development could advance. I think some of the cynicism and some of the concepts that have been advanced have been city-sponsored, projects. I hate to say this, but the city sometimes is in a fiscally constrained mode. They have to prioritize where their money goes. This is a specific project. We'll have finances available to do and advance off-site roadway work that would benefit the community. It would not have to go through the city process. It'll need to be reviewed by the city and approved by the city, but the funding for it will ultimately come from this project. We'll continue to look at the access needs of the project, any roadway and intersection upgrades that would happen there, and then again, as I mentioned, try to tap into some of the existing transit services with the Metro West RTA, other options that exist out here to try to get folks to and from this development, not in a single driver car, but maybe a bus or a transit type use. Look for ways to integrate pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to this site and other sites and some of the amenities that exist out here that I'm sure many of you use. And then try to advance other elements of the city's transportation demand management out here. At the end of the day, this will then go to the city boards with public opportunity to chime in on these, to support, not support the project as it advances, and then ultimately the city will make the decision on that. But again, the first step on this is that step of getting your input here tonight and understanding what your thoughts are about the project. And again, as I said, I hope they're constructive, and I hope that they're meaningful input that we get here tonight. And that's really why we're here today. So I just wanted to sort of talk about the traffic transportation, because I do know that most folks here are concerned about that. You're concerned about the project, and you want to hear more about the project, but I certainly know that that's one of the elements that we're going to start looking into. So with that, do we want to go right into Q&A here? Peter, do you want to talk a little bit about some stuff?
As we said, this kind of a deep overview because it's a work in process. We're looking for your input on all this. So we'll go straight to the questions and answers. We would ask that you provide your name and address. We would ask that you provide your name and address so that we can respond tonight. If we have to follow up, we can follow up with you. If you saw the poster out front, you can scan that. That'll lead you to the website as well. So we'll be adding follow-up questions tonight on the website. So who wants to start off?
Mike's not on.
Turn the mic on, please. And who's next? Hey.
My name is Ray McKean, I live on the first.
Just hold on.
And one of the issues we are already.
Can't hear you. Yeah, talk.
Public speaking voices. I live on Frost Street. My name is Ray McKean. And 40 years. And one of the issues that already exists, that there are several streets or roads that empty onto Edge of Road that people already use as a cut through to avoid the lights. And it's a safety issue. It's almost 7 years. It's almost every 7 years something would happen for a while. Parked vehicles would be hit. People ended up on lawns and different houses. And for 8 years now, so that's going to happen again. But that's already an issue. So I just hope that's kept in mind. Just that intersection, Main Street, and really those aren't the only issues. So I don't know. I know that it's streets. McAdams is another one.
Yep.
People come off of Edmonds, and they have no regard. They just want to get rid of the vehicles.
Part of the permitting requirements when you run a traffic study is not only to review our driveway entrances, but all the intersections within at least 1,000 feet of the site. And we'll talk to the city about expanding that to address other roadways where intersections are. So that'll all be ultimately part of the final traffic report. It'll extend well beyond this site.
So I just wanted to piggyback on what he was saying.
Yep.
All of the streets that were mentioned
Why don't you give
is
your name and address?
Mary Estates.
Hold it up.
Mary Estates, 23 Level Rate. I think everybody can hear me? Do you want me to hold it? Can you hear me now? Yeah. So you guys keep talking about Edgell Road and Edmonds Road, but with all of the improvements that have been made, they actually created, like the gentleman said, a backup to Frost, to Livoli. Cars are constantly speeding. Children cannot be on the streets at this point. It's actually ridiculous in the amount of time that I've spent on that street. I've never seen anything like this. So you're saying that the report is going to be available. At what point before we can see other changes to this development when the report is going to be available?
As Rob said, once the project is fully defined, we get to the stage, assuming the zoning is done, we get to the stage of working with the planning board, the traffic report will have to be done with that. So probably a month before that happens, you'll see the little boxes and the lines across the road, count all the traffic in all those various intersections. That is then projected into numbers to find out what levels of service at each intersection. They'll do a crash study, they'll do a pedestrian access, it's all part of that review process. Do you have anything else? Yeah.
Gary Spence, Section Carter Drive. You say that will be a month before things get done. Would that mean that you would do it after the other project that's going on in Nobscot, creating all of those cars and everything? So you're going to wait until that's all done before you do it? You said it's a month before we do it.
Right.
Right. So you would have to take all of that into consideration, meaning you would have to wait until the other project is done, or you wouldn't get it accurate.
Well, we wouldn't necessarily wait until that project is in, because you don't know when that occupancy is in. But we use standard transportation engineers' reports that the city will review. The city will hire a consultant that the developer pays for to analyze our report to make sure it's accurate. And within that report, it'll take the Nobscot project for the numbers of units. If it isn't fully occupied, it'll project a higher count than the numbers we actually count, whatever the date is that we count on.
I think that's avoidance.
Well, again, you don't know when that project has been delayed 2 to 3 years now. You don't know if it's going to be delayed any further. Did I see somebody? Yep. Name and address?
Yes, my name is Vlad George. I live at 547 Edmonds Road. Okay, so my question basically is, so my understanding that we're talking about between 300 and 500 units in various permutations, and then we have 156 units on the other side of the intersection that's already approved. Now, what we have with all of that, my question is, if we forget about like details, the big picture is that both Edmonds Road and Edgell Road, they're one-lane roads. And we also all know that most of the people who will be living there, except for the senior housing, they're going to have to commute, and most of them will commute by the car. In this area, even with improved public transportation, it's not like center of Framingham where they have commuter rail. It's very, and many other options. It's very different here. So we're going to have hundreds of vehicles that will have to empty via Edmonds Road or Edgell Road, which are both one lane, and whichever way driveway is designed, it's going to be a problem. And even now, say at intersection and then at intersection of McAdams and Edgell, and some days I go there every day, through there every day, wait up to 10 minutes sometimes. And then there is a Edgel Road, there's one lane all the way up to here. And then we have traffic backing up here. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen when there is another like close to 500 new units? Whichever way it is designed, we still have that sort of immovable situation where both of these roads are one-lane roads and throughout the lanes, and I can't imagine how it could be changed, how you can make them two-lane roads, say, because there are houses and so on and so forth. So that doesn't seem to be like a valid option. So how is this issue going to be addressed?
The roadway capacity is not, I don't think there's capacity to double lanes in each of the directions, but the whole thing would be able to
under no scenario would we look at widening the roadway to a 4-lane cross-section or anything like that. That would change the overall character, tenfold of this area. So I don't think that that's really on the table here from this perspective. Where I do think, traffic congestion happens at the intersections that intersect onto main roadways out there. So what we would do, we'd spend some time looking at those intersections and how to improve the capacity of each of those. We talked a little bit about the city's master plan, the transportation master plan, some of the ideas they had for water and Edgel and Emmons Road. We would look at other intersections. McAdam, for instance, would be part of that. We'd look to see if there are any improvements that could happen at that specific location there that would improve the throughput, if you will, but keep it safe as traffic is coming through those intersections. That would be all part of the traffic study that we would do.
Well, but I mean, how do you're experienced traffic consultant, how do you even imagine to resolve this, like say here, the traffic backs up here on Edgel Road coming into Route 9, when you add, another few hundred cars every morning, how is it going to be?
Those are things that we would look at as we go into the process. I wish I could tell you what the answers are now. We're not at that stage right now because they don't really have a project yet. They don't know what they're going to build out there. We're hoping to hear some commentary here amongst the folks about some of the makeup of the development, what you like and don't like about that as well. Certainly it all translates to traffic as well, so if there's an opportunity to talk a little bit about that, I would love to hear those thoughts. But I do think that there are opportunities at many of the intersections along the corridor, and I'm using Edmonds as sort of the main line, if you will, but not trying to say that water and Edgel are not part of that discussion, because they absolutely are. We want to make sure that those are sort of addressed as a traffic issue. That's what I would spend time looking at.
Did you ever see a scenario?
We'll get to you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you guys for coming out, all the residents here in Framingham. But I wanted to make a note. My name is Janet Bruno. I'm the vice chair of the city council, and we have a quorum plus maybe one or two here tonight. So I wanted to make note that we would be violating open meeting for any of us to make any comments. So I don't know. We're kind of spread out, and I just don't know if the rest of my council members know that we have a quorum. So we cannot violate the open meeting, so if anybody has any offline commentary you want to come to any of us, I will speak for my counselors that are here, but I'm sure they would be very willing to have any conversations. But I just wanted to let you guys know, just it's not that we're not going to be asking questions, it's just we're not going to be able to. Thank you.
So that they will listen, but they won't say a word.
That's it.
Andy Banks, 2 Carter Drive. And I know we're talking about traffic or hypothetical. Development that's going on right now. We don't know when it's going to be, how many units of traffic. So we're all dealing with hypotheticals, right? Could you see a scenario after all your studies and everything, as things start getting built, that as your review, is it possible you could say, hey, for all these studies you've done, with all the improvements we potentially could do, it still would not alleviate the traffic. Thus, we recommend a lower density of development. Is that a foreseeable possibility?
Thanks. The short, sweet answer to that is yes. We have certain standards that we have to meet in how we evaluate these projects. And if we can't meet those standards, the measures of effectiveness at each of the intersections and the roadways that we study need to be held up to. We can't professionally come forward and say this is a good project, it's going to be safe, it's going to address, these improvements are going to address that. So at that point in time, the city, I suspect, would come back to us and say, hey fellas, folks, you can't address this issue, it's a safety issue, it's a capacity issue. One of the ways you would consider addressing it is by reducing the development that would happen on the site. And, you know, and that's happened before. I see that plenty of times. You know, that it's the give and take of this. This is an ideal project right now. I think it's a project that they want to advance. I'm putting words in their mouth here, but it's their project. It's what they want to advance at this point in time. Once we get into the study process, lots of things can affect the development density, and that may be one of them. There are other factors that could affect it as well.
We're going to go this way and come around.
Thank you. My name is Beth Greeley, 111 Pleasant Street, and I have kind of more of a process question. It's not about traffic, so you're happy to hear that. This project has taken a very unusual path to this point for most projects. I won't go into all the details, but it's unusual, and the zoning by petition is especially unusual. I guess I missed the first 10 minutes, so I hope I didn't miss this information. But I'm curious to know, development is your business. This Nobscot Village zoning took years of work between neighbors and landowners and commercial interests, and came to what seemed to be a happy compromise. It has room for housing, it has room for some commercial space. I guess my question is, why this gigantic project when there is room to build housing and some commercial interests? Why not start with complying with the existing zoning, which took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, rather than coming in and trying to blow it up and blow up this gigantic development? Thanks.
Part of that process, again, is not to change the zoning. We understand everything that we're going to need to create that zoning. But from the viewpoint of a legitimate size of a project, that's where it all comes into play. So again, we're not talking about changing any of the aspects from the viewpoint of the allowed height, the allowed density, all those things that you people went through for years to develop. Those will all be incorporated as part of the design, 50% open space, the required parking, the setbacks, all those things. This plan would ultimately develop that once it's determined what the program is. Anything else? All right, so again, we're going to follow through around.
Good evening. My name is Mary Key. I live at 5 Ledgewood Road. It's wonderful to see everybody here tonight. There's a lot one can say about this project, and there's a lot we can say about development in Framingham, and there's a lot we can say about traffic. I just want to convey just a couple of things. One, where we're here tonight should have been done a couple of months ago, so that we understand what you're looking for in the zoning change. This has caused a lot of anger and strife and confusion, and that's maybe why the temperature is a bit high in this room. I don't need to wear a coat. So a couple of things. One, I think it is a mistake to base your traffic studies based on something, on not having that development in the plaza. We don't know what that's going to bring. Two, what conversations have you had with our public transportation agency here in Framingham? There is very, and by very, I mean little, public transportation that comes to this part of Framingham. There is not a route. So I don't foresee that happening anytime soon unless we get more funding from the state, et cetera, to have buses run up here. And this is not also a part of town where we're used to having public transportation and buses and everybody has a car. Thirdly, what is going to happen about the parking at this location if you have retail? Because if you're basing your parking on the number of spots in the apartments, okay, so you've got 2 slots for every apartment or unit, then what's going to happen about the parking for people who want to go to the restaurant or the beer garden that you have in your pictures? Like, are people going to be then posting or parking on Adam, the Bowling, Edmonds? Oh God, that would be a disaster to have people park on Edmonds. So I think that is, these roads are different. They're New England roads based on farming. I pause a little bit when I hear, well, we're going to look at the intersection of McAdam and Edgell to reconstruct that. Well, what does that mean? Houses are right there. That's a tight intersection. So these are just some things I think that you guys need to think about. This is changing the culture, the style of this, and the way that this New England town was formed. You should really take that into account with your development. Thank you so much.
A couple quick answers from my perspective. I got involved after the petition was filed, but because of that, in the input that was received, that's why the petition was withdrawn. So we would have the opportunity to sit with folks, namely tonight, if they come over, we'll do that, okay? From the viewpoint of communications with the city, I think they've been kind of preliminary in nature, in the nature of traffic. Before we do the traffic study, we will sit down with them and figure out the exact scope of all the intersections that the city would want studied as part of that report. And lastly, from the viewpoint of the parking requirement, again, our proposal will meet the requirements of that. If coming back through the initial site plan review process, there's additional requests for additional parking, whether it be the senior facility or anything else, we'll incorporate additional parking into the project. But from the viewpoint of the parking requirement, well, I can answer this more than I can, but I mean, all bylaws are intended to address numbers of parking spaces per unit, which incorporates visitors and all those types of things. So we'll meet all the city's requirements, and if the city talks about adding some more spaces, whether it's the commercial or whatever, we'll incorporate that as well. Nobody over here? Okay.
Lisa Feldman, number 1, McAdams Road. I have here a folder of over 40 years of proposals for development, and what usually it comes down to is profit, and the density follows from that. Because the site has a lot of rock that needs to be blasted, we're all at risk of changes. We're just having I'm also a retired teacher from Framingham Public Schools for 27 years. And I understand how schools need to do planning, and we cannot legislate who moves into town, nor do we wish to. But that said, we cannot do planning for schools when we don't have a handle on the numbers. And frankly, this kind of proposal is not in character, and I can read letters from earlier administrations talking about the balance and what's good for the town. And what's good for the town is when you listen.
A couple of things that, again, going through the site plan process, they're required to go through the planning board, of which notice has to go out to everybody within 300 feet. We'll also put that on the website so everybody knows. We'll communicate with everybody on that. Part of that analysis is the whole environmental conditions of the property, requirements from the viewpoint of what we show on the plans for buffers to the residential buffers to the street, the whole deal. Also from the viewpoint of what we have to do for drainage and recharge of the drainage system. Also an analysis from the viewpoint of whether there's soil testing of that, whether we encounter any ledge. And part of that review process is then how we address how we deal with ledge, which is highly regulated in Massachusetts. There's pre-surveys that have to be done of the body properties and houses and everything else and final surveys. So that's kind of, we're not at that level yet, but we will ultimately get there. Yeah, we're coming.
Mary Salmon, I live on Whiting Road. So my question to you is, where is the rezoning proposal now? Because with the petition you brought forth, it was going to push it through
for only a majority. So a whole bunch of us got together so that we'd need a 2/3 majority of the city council. So where does it stand now with the zoning?
The process, the petition has been withdrawn, so there's nothing in front of the city at this point.
So we would need.
We would have to refile, as was said before, we're going to talk to those of us who don't want their parcels included, and then rework, and ultimately, as we develop more of this plan and everything else, then we would have to file another petition.
So would you do the 10 signatures again, and then all of the town people would have to get all of our signatures again to require the 2/3 majority of the city council? So that's what you're saying?
That's a question the city will have to analyze and review as part of the process. The statute allows for filing of a zoning petition or zoning change by 10 residents, yes.
But Peter, we'll file. We're going to file.
Hold on.
Yeah, everything's right, but we're going to file.
Right.
Yeah, we're not going to do it.
All right?
So there's no violence currently.
We're coming.
My name is Amy Lemary. I live on Dartmouth Drive. So first, a few different things. First of all, I am glad that you're here to listen. I'm not going to debate the timing of it. It could be better. I hope that you'll do more of these as this project. I hope that you'll do more of these as this project. Sorry about that. As this project proceeds. Now, a couple of comments. The two projects that nobody's mentioned are the ones that are happening down on the end of Grove Street, which are going to bring significant, something like 200 or so units, more units into the area. Those units are going to not only generate traffic, but they're all over 55. Now, they're all over 55 restricted. So I don't know what the requirements or what Framingham's needs are for over 55 housing, but it seems like there's an awful lot of it being built in this area. So as you're thinking about your restrictions, it's something you might want to keep in your mind. The other thing that's bothering me a little bit is the process and the order of how things are happening. So before you get into an in-depth traffic study, you want this zoning approved. And I understand why you want to go in that order, because it's a financial risk. On the other hand, once the zoning is approved, this project is about 90%, I mean, it's almost guaranteed that something's going to be built there. And I think that's what the concern is. So, in my mind, I don't really want to see an approval until we really understand the traffic. And we're not going to understand what the traffic's going to be like until after it's approved. So, to me, I'm seeing a real nasty conflict there, and I'm really concerned about that.
No, legitimate point, and part of our thought from the going through the zoning process is that we will have as much detail in the project, as much detail in the traffic, based upon the project at that point in time, which we're hoping for your input on, whether you want more senior, less senior. That's what we're looking, in addition to your comments you're making tonight, we want your comments on that aspect as well. But you're right, the legitimate question from the viewpoint of concern about the zoning approval and then what happens. But it'd be our intent that the plan that we have at the time we go through the zoning would be the project that we did. So we have let's say a 75% full understanding of what it would be, because it would change as a result of input through the planning board process. It certainly wouldn't be a higher density going through the planning process, but in all likelihood would be a lower or improved project, presumably.
Hi, Jeffrey Fontaine, 20 Montgomery Drive. I've been to a number of these meetings for other projects and went through that process with the spot that's going into the Nobscot Plaza area. And we had a lot of issues with the lack of communication and the lack of clarity. And as I was very excited to see that you have a website, and you're doing some spreading of information, but when I look under the facade, there's no detail here. There are no numbers around the number of units, the occupancy you're looking for. You said you're about 75% sure of what this is going to look like to get the zoning. We need the details. We need the data to be able to make an informed decision and have informed input to the project. I really want to see the data. Not just, and then we can decide how that's going to impact traffic in our schools and have an idea, because we're the ones who live here.
Give you some conceptual plan currently has 350 apartments, 50 townhouses, and 16 duplex units, so 32 units total. It has 33,000 square feet of retail, and the assisted living, which is around 100,000 square feet, which is on 2 levels. The assisted at 80 units.
Any idea how many children would be?
So based on the RKG study, we ran a rough student count. Again, it's going to change based on what we end up with, but 25 to 30 school-age students.
No way, no way.
I mean, we're using the RKG study in this, so.
Impact of the school study, I've done a few of these housing projects, Saxonville up there, the project over on Franklin Street. We will have, as part of that analysis, the studies from the school department itself, from the viewpoint of how many kids are in various apartments, run that analysis. That'll all be presented to the city as part of the planning review process, and that'll be analyzed as part of our fiscal impact statement. So there's always concern about the number of kids in the school system. When we get to the stage of the project, that'll all go through that process.
Hi, my name is Elisa Feldman. I live at 378 Edmonds Road. I bought my house in 1986 because it was a very countrified, totally residential area. There were horses. There was a farm, and there still is. That Edmonds Road has had at least 2 pedestrian deaths on it since I've been there, and it actually may be more, but I can quantify 2. It is a narrow, winding, hilly road. You can't expand it. You can't put in sidewalks. I want to tell you, I am dead set against commercial zoning for this area. And to anyone here who has a business, who's hoping to put a restaurant or supermarket in there, we will protest and we will not utilize, because we have enough shopping in this area. Metro West and Route 9 is a shopping kingdom. We don't need another city. Let's get real. We don't want it. And as for traffic, I want to help you right now with your traffic survey. How many people in this room have had trouble going from Edmonds onto Edgell and Water? How many have tried to do that when school buses and parents are dropping off and picking up kids in Hemingway? You can't even get a fire truck out of that fire station. It's so congested when those parents are going in and out. Not to mention what it's going to do to the sewer system and the water system. We have a problem. Take a look at that picture, the first picture. Does that not look like Baltimore's ghetto row house housing? Is that what you want to ghettoize the north area of Framingham? And I want to talk to the mayor and all the city council people. You were elected, and you can be impeached, and you can be thrown out the next election. If you rubber stamp this project, you're going to be finished. You want residential? Take a look at New York City and what happened in the pandemic. People were fleeing apartment buildings. People don't want to live in a condensed, crowded area with a common elevator, common laundry rooms. They want private houses for safety and security. This is a bad plan. It's overdeveloped.
Robin Kynock, 15 Ciderville. This is kind of a different kind of question, but I'm just wondering, zoning changes in general, do developers talk to public safety? Do they talk to the fire departments when the fire departments handle this, another huge development? They talk to the police. I was wondering about the water, the sewage, things like that.
The consultants are doing that job. Understand everything from the viewpoint of the building. I think it's 7,500 square feet that has to be sprinkled. The residential house is less than that. That's part of all the fiscal analysis, part of the review process. We have to project, based upon the ultimate project, what the tax revenue would be into that, what the cost is to get the project would be, including impact of the schools and everything else, and a requirement to ultimately be a net positive. So as part of that review, we get input, police and fire, as far as what their additional costs and concerns are. I've had projects, I think it was Saxonville, where we ended up buying the town of fire truck. Town at that point in time, city now, but that goes into the whole review.
My name is Jean Wood. I live further from here, and I drive through here all the time. My question is, have you bought the property? Do you own it? And have you had a stipulation on the purchase that the zoning has to be changed, or else you don't go through with the buying of the property? Have you bought it before the zoning change?
I'm sorry?
Have you bought the property before the zoning change?
Yeah, the property is its own now.
You bought it?
Yes.
You have no stipulation that you can get out of that if the zoning change doesn't go through?
That's always a risk of buying property.
Okay, so...
Answer the question.
What?
Half of it.
Half of it, not all of it.
Right.
Okay,
We
so...
purchased 13 acres, and we have under control the abutting 13 acres. Contingent upon permit. You have an agreement.
All right, my thing, just for you people, he can't do anything until the zoning is changed.
Correct.
So I think you better work on that.
Hi, I'm Tony Manheim. I live at 27 Lowley Road. I'm one of the abutters, and I'm not happy about this, but I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I think that they have to be realistic about baiting you with all these amenities of having restaurants and retail, but if you go to Sudbury, Wayland, Maynard, who built complexes like these, they have empty buildings still. Sudbury, the TJ Maxx has empty buildings. There's constant still places that are empty. So there's not realistic that they're going to be putting retail and restaurants in here. Plus they're taking away from our own restaurants that we have already here. And I want to let you know that if this goes, I think we should all band together and get a GoFundMe page up and get our own attorneys to start fighting this, because I think that we as people should be
Hi, I'm Lori Greenblatt at 21 Lowley Road. Our house abuts the woods. We bought our house 20 years ago to enjoy the woods, a quiet backyard. And no one's talked about quality of life. Last time they blasted, we have tracks in our foundation. I screamed every time the blast went off. We called the fire department. My elderly dog at the time hid under the bed. We had no quality of life. And I don't see this being positive in any way whatsoever. We love the woods, and we love our backyard. People on our side of our road have put pools in. They have nice backyards. We have barbecues. We're not going to have that. It's going to be noisy. It's going to be light pollution. Yeah, the wildlife is going to be... Yeah, we won't. And the cars go speeding up our streets, as has been mentioned before.
I'm Richard Greenblatt. I'm living at 21 Lowley Road with my wife. And, yeah, but, yeah, I mean, it was horrible. I mean, how can you, I mean, it's all ledge. It's all ledge. And as you stated before, it's a hard material to crack. My foundation was totally, not totally, but very well compromised by the blasting. They guaranteed in the last developers that that would not happen. There's no way in heck through physics that that can't happen. So my question might be, how are you going to be able to stop that?
The requirement in Massachusetts, if you blast, is that everybody within a certain distance, I can't remember what that distance is, you have to inspect their property and conduct an analysis, a pre-study blast study, so we find out the cracks that you already have. and it's strict liability. So if it's, I don't know what happened on your previous case, I can't give you legal advice on that, but it's strict liability for blasting. So if there was damages that wasn't part of that first report, whoever did the blasting is liable to you for that amount. That's why there's a lot of insurance on that. But again, there's strict liability. It's their burden to prove you didn't get damaged rather than your typical burden of proving that it was damaged.
Damage was done and then they weren't going to do it. You guys can do the same thing.
Well,
walk away.
no, that's what everything's going on. The fire department doesn't sign off on the blasting permit until all those criteria are met. We'll get back to you.
How you doing? My name is Dan Howard. I live at 7 Acre Road. And I feel I'm one of the most affected people being a butter to this property for about 30 to 50 feet. I was a butter to the RCS project. And I'm just like, one thing comes to mind is no one has even reached out to me yet. You're saying you spoke to neighbors, you spoke to folks about this project. Nobody's contacted me. Second of all is the houses that are on Edmonds Road, the ones that you haven't bought or aren't bought. There's no consideration in these plans. And if you look at these plans closely, you've actually erased my house and put trees up on this conceptual plan. I realize they're conceptual plans, but you've erased my house and put trees. So I just want to make sure people understand that there's no consideration for Edmund Road. First, please explain to me. Thank you.
We took the images from Google Earth, so let's take a peek.
Why don't you guys chat so you can get the rest of it?
Hi, Annie Murphy. I'm 580 Edmonds Road. And one of the fatalities happened in front of my house. And the man was killed. My husband it was awful. I've lived here for, I think, 40 years almost on Edmonds Road. I think you said it in that you, at one point, a traffic question, you said, oh no, we wouldn't do 2 lanes, that would change the character. It's like, this project does not fit in that. We don't want more stores or restaurants. We know the inevitability of housing. We don't need restaurants, we don't need stores. Your website talks about community desires. The community does not desire this project.
My name's Chuck Finley, I live at 35 Lavoli Road. Just to touch base on what people were saying here, this is the residential neighborhood, okay? And now you want to completely change it, put this monstrosity in here, and ruin the quality of life for everybody that lives here. I get it. You want to develop it. Single-family housing, not this monstrosity that's going to... I see an ambulance trying to get up Edmonds Road, and because it's so narrow, nobody can go anywhere, and that ambulance came to a complete stop. Now, if I was having a heart attack, I want the ambulance at my house as soon as possible, and that's a big issue. And like everybody was saying, there's only so much you can do with the traffic in that area. This just isn't made for this. You're trying to jam this into a residential area. It just isn't made for it.
I'm Sue Bernstein, 8 Marion Road. I do not live in your neighborhood, but I've always been very interested in development in Framingham. And I'm very happy to see such a big turnout. I find it a little disappointing that you have all these lovely pictures here, but I think it would have been helpful to bring some diagrams of how you intend to increase the the roadways in the intersection that will handle the traffic from this plus another 150 units that are going to be built in Nobscot Plaza. But, you know, the comment was, well, we haven't gotten to that yet. And yet, I'm sure that a large percentage of the people here are very interested in that, and it's disappointing you didn't bring it. And just for everybody else's knowledge, there are 2 city councilors here in the room, so it's good that they're hearing everyone's thoughts. Seven? Yes, I missed some of them. So they've heard your concerns, and hopefully will listen, and hopefully the developer will listen too.
We've been at it for an hour. We know there's a lot of people opposed to it, so we're looking for new comments and input.
My name is Matt Woolhouse. I live at 473 Edgell Road, and that's at the corner of Brook and Edgell. And you guys probably know this, you probably go past that all the time. I'll do my best. So I'm at the edge of Brook and Edgell. You guys know this. It's that deadly corner. You can't see beyond it. So it's trouble. Right now, it's pretty bad. It's in bad shape. People get into accidents all the time. I sometimes have to run out of my house and try to be like a first responder, right? I mean, it's gotten that bad. I got a car in my front lawn. Traffic's bad already, okay? We don't need this massive, impactful development in our backyard. This is too much. We already have like an Nobscot Plaza thing going on, but that's going to happen, right? And how are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to know exactly what kind of traffic impact that's going to pose on top of the other developments, regionally speaking, guys? Okay? How much that's going to impact our entire neighborhood? You know, it doesn't just impact the intersection. It impacts all of us. Getting back and forth, it's great. It really is. The fact that we're even here talking about this tonight is bothersome. I'm sure it's bothering most of you. Take it back up.
Again, we've heard the traffic concerns. We got to do all the report. We're looking for additional comments or new comments.
Nancy Shonway, 87 Edmonds Road. And I want to echo what everybody else here has said. I moved from the city to be in Framingham for the quality of life that Framingham presents. Okay? Family and being able to just raise a son and just have that quality of life. Edmonds Road is very, very narrow. I can't get out of my own home any day because of traffic. There is no way you can ever increase pavements and have pavements there. I cannot even run up the street. And then what I'm finding a little difficult is that that gentleman gives us numbers, and then when it comes to the head count of children, you minimize it to 30 as though we are buffoons and cannot reach through that. It would be great for you guys to be very realistic with us, and I do feel at the same time that we are going backwards. You are going to do a visibility study on the traffic after. It doesn't make any sense because that is very crucial to us. We want to know how the schools are going to be affected. We want to know exactly how the traffic is going to be, especially that we can drive in our own streets and feel comfortable and safe. So please, give us more data than the pretty pictures that you have.
Again, new comments. We've already spoken. We're going to new people.
Hi, I'm Lisa Lormer. I live at 618 Edmonds Road. I have not lived here for 40 years. We moved here for, I think we ran out of batteries.
Yep, that's on. That's right. Yep, just hold it up.
We moved here for the college setting and a really good school. Hemingway, unfortunately, is going to become, or fortunately, I should say, there's going to be progress. Hemingway is going to become a universal pre-K for the whole city. Hemingway's elementary school is going to close. This is great. This is change. Things change. But how is this going to affect Hemingway and our school system on the north side?
The question you didn't hear was changes to Hemingway and K-12 and everything else. And again, at that last stage, we have to analyze that. We have to project the students in. The school department gets all that. They give input back, and then everybody goes.
But it's all happening at once.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to get a good read.
I can just piggyback off of her. I was crunching some numbers on education.
Yeah.
Framingham, Kate Harrington, 8 Lowly Road. Looking at the numbers from DESE, so the total number of students is almost 10,000 in Framingham Public Schools, 9,274 as of November. It has grown 5% in the last year. The school system, which is wonderful. That says a lot about Framingham. But, I mean, I've seen this all over. I grew up in Brighton. I lived there for 38 years. Complete just chaos. And just even seeing, I work as a teacher in Natick, the amount of housing that wasn't going to really impact the amount of kids. Oh, projected 25, 30 kids. All of a sudden, we had to build new schools, tax money. I mean, it's a ripple effect. So just so you know, I mean, here's some facts about the amount of students and what percentage it grew in a year.
Hi everyone, my name is Kate Marilyn. I'm at 152 Edmonds Road, and wanted to offer a little bit of a different perspective. You asked for alternate sort of comments or things. There was also a request for comments on the exact proposal. My partner Cody and I have lived here for 3 months. We bought 152 Edmonds Road, which is a direct abutting property here. And when a new neighbor stopped by to introduce themselves, we were pretty horrified to learn of this proposed development, because when we purchased our home, it's a historic 1800s home. It has a beautiful post and beam barn outside it, and it was driven around that corner of Edmonds, and it was a big yellow barn. And to learn that behind that barn, our woods are going to turn into a beer garden, pickleball courts, and a massive high-density housing complex was very concerning. So what I wanted to share was the perspective of, I've heard a lot about economic revitalization, I think was the term that you used. And there's discussion around how mixed development, mixed-use development might bring value to the community. And I know that we're all aware of the Water Street development that's going up, that's going to bring 158 very desperately needed new housing units, because we do have a supply crunch here. We tried to buy for a year before we were able to get our first house. So I think we do have solutions already in place, and that new complex is introducing 61,000 square feet of new retail space as well. So already, right in this exact intersection, we have a lot of what you're describing as your proposed solutions to problems that we're aware of and that we're working on as a community to do our part. So what I wanted to stress here was that, when we talk about revitalization, Nobscot is already vital in its own way. We could have purchased anywhere in Greater Boston, and we specifically chose this neighborhood. We waited a year to buy a house in this neighborhood because it is historic, because it's pastoral, because it's quiet, because there's beautiful, lovely, happy neighborhoods. We're not looking for high density. If we did, we'd live closer to Route 9 or any of the other spaces that are more urbanized, faster paced, and high density. So what I wanted to share was, in terms of perspective, you're right, you purchased part of this land, you're welcome to develop it, but please hear feedback from the community that what you've proposed here is completely altering the nature, and the feedback that you're getting is that we don't necessarily want that. We specifically live here because it is quiet, because it is rural. We're not looking for restaurants and shops and high-density units. So please keep that in mind, and I would love to see alternate proposals as you continue to work through this on how you can work with the existing zoning, how you can keep this single family or potentially duplexes at max to restrict impact on traffic, which you're hearing is a big concern, but also just the fabric of this neighborhood. What makes it so valuable and desirable to people and young professionals from all over Greater Boston who want to live here in its current state. Thank you.
I think we've heard the issues from the people who are major concerns on people on the sides of the project and traffic.
Hi, my name is Pam Keeney. I live at 1153 Grove Street, which is right where Grove Street and Edmonds meet. I live right on the corner of two very scenic roads, which are very narrow, which are very windy, all of which now have speed bumps on them because of all the cut-through traffic. I don't think our neighborhood needs this, and I would just say, If you agree with me, please tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your relatives, write to your council people. This can't be done without a zoning change, and your council people are the ones that have to vote on the zoning change. And don't just write to your council, write to all of them, and the mayor. Make your voice heard. Thank you.
So I think, again, it looks like people have kind of heard what they were going to say, said by others. So we want to thank you for coming out. Again, provide the link on the poster out there. We'll try to update. We'll try to provide some additional responses. We'll keep you updated from the viewpoint of the project as it proceeds. Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks for everyone coming out and sharing. We really appreciate it. Thank you.